60 years. For 60 years, the most powerful government on the planet has been sitting on documents. Classified documents about the murder of its own president. Think about that for a second. Not a foreign leader, not a celebrity, the President of the United States, shot dead in broad daylight, in front of hundreds of witnesses, on camera. And somehow, we still don't know the full story. Or at least, that's what they want you to think. Because here's the thing. The evidence was there all along. The witnesses were there. The documents were there. The bullet was there. And the people who were supposed to protect John F. Kennedy, the most powerful men in Washington, knew something was coming and didn't stop it. This is the JFK assassination, and this is the version they didn't want you to see. Here's the official story. November 22nd, 1963. Dallas, Texas. President John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, 46 years old, the youngest man ever elected to the office, is riding through downtown Dallas in an open-top Lincoln limousine. His wife Jacqueline is beside him. Governor John Connally is in the seat ahead. The crowd is cheering. The sun is out. It's a good day. The motorcade turns onto Elm Street and enters a plaza called Dealey Plaza. And at 12:30 in the afternoon, shots ring out. Kennedy is hit. He's rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital. At 1 p.m., President John F. Kennedy is pronounced dead. He never made it to the speech he was scheduled to give that afternoon. Within hours, a man named Lee Harvey Oswald is arrested. He's a 24-year-old former Marine who worked in the Texas School Book Depository, the building right next to Dealey Plaza. The official story says Oswald positioned himself on the 6th floor with a rifle he'd ordered by mail and fired 3 shots in 8.6 seconds. 2 days later, before Oswald can stand trial, before he can say a single word in court, a Dallas nightclub owner named Jack Ruby walks into a police station and shoots Oswald dead. Live on television. The Warren Commission, a government investigation chaired by Supreme Court Chief Justice Earl Warren, spends 10 months reviewing the evidence and concludes, Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Case closed. Except 67% of Americans don't believe it. That's not a fringe number. That's not a conspiracy theory crowd. That is 2 out of every 3 Americans who have looked at the official story and said, something doesn't add up. And here's the thing, they're not wrong. In March of 2025, the Trump administration released more than 77,000 pages of previously classified documents about the Kennedy assassination. 77,000 pages. Documents that the CIA, the FBI, and multiple administrations had fought for decades to keep hidden. And what did those documents reveal? That the CIA had been watching Lee Harvey Oswald since 1959. That's 4 years before the assassination. They watched him defect to the Soviet Union. They watched him come back. They watched him move to Dallas. They watched him visit the Soviet embassy in Mexico City 6 weeks before the shooting, where he met with a KGB operative known specifically for assassination operations. And they didn't tell the FBI. They didn't alert the Secret Service. They didn't warn anybody. Let me say that again. The CIA knew that the man who would be accused of killing the president had walked into a Soviet embassy and met with a KGB assassination specialist 6 weeks before November 22nd, 1963. And they said nothing. Now, maybe that's incompetence. Maybe it's something else entirely. But here's what we know for certain. The official story, the lone gunman, 3 shots, case closed story, has more holes in it than the motorcade had security. And we're going to go through every single one. Let's start with Lee Harvey Oswald, because the official story needs you to believe that Oswald was a troubled loner, a failed Marine with communist sympathies who woke up one morning and decided to kill the president. But here's the thing about that story. The more you look at Oswald's life, the less it looks like the biography of a lone gunman, and the more it looks like the biography of someone who was being used. Used for what? That's the question that 60 years of investigation hasn't been able to answer. But let me walk you through what we actually know, because the facts alone are enough to make you question everything. Here's what the official story needs you to believe about Oswald: that he was a nobody, a loser, a man who couldn't hold a job, couldn't keep a marriage together, couldn't make friends, couldn't get anything right. A man so invisible that he could order a rifle through the mail under a fake name. By the way, that name was A. Hidell. Carry it to work, hide it in the building, and nobody noticed. That's the portrait the Warren Commission painted. A loner, an irrelevance, a man nobody was watching. Except, of course, the CIA, who had been watching him for 4 years. Think about that contradiction for a moment. The Warren Commission says Oswald was a nobody, a marginal figure on the fringe of American political life. But the CIA had a file on him, had been monitoring his movements, had tracked his visit to Mexico City, had a cable about his meeting with the KGB assassination specialist. You don't maintain a 4-year intelligence file on a nobody. You maintain a file like that on someone who matters, someone who's connected to something bigger, someone who has a role to play. Oswald was born in New Orleans in 1939. His father died before he was born. He had a difficult childhood, moved around constantly, struggled in school, showed early signs of what today we'd probably recognize as serious instability. At 17, he joined the Marines. And here's where it gets interesting. Oswald was trained as a radar operator, specifically at a base in Japan that tracked U-2 spy planes. Top secret, highly classified. At 19 years old, a kid who grew up poor in New Orleans had access to some of the most classified aviation intelligence in the American military. In 1959, Oswald walked into the American embassy in Moscow and announced he wanted to defect to the Soviet Union. He renounced his American citizenship. He told Soviet officials he planned to share American military secrets with them. And the American government, the CIA, the State Department, let him go. No arrest, no treason charges, no consequences. A man with classified knowledge of top-secret American spy plane operations just walked into the Soviet Union, and nobody stopped him. He lived in the Soviet Union for 3 years, got married to a Russian woman named Marina. Then in 1962, he came back. Just like that. With his Soviet wife, no prosecution, no surveillance. Welcome home, Lee. Except, and here's where you need to pay close attention, the CIA absolutely had a file on him. The 2025 documents confirmed it. They'd been watching him from the moment he defected. They had cables, they had surveillance reports, they had documentation of his Soviet contacts, and they never told anyone. Now, ask yourself this. Why does a government intelligence agency quietly watch a defector with classified knowledge move back to America and not arrest him? Not monitor him publicly? Not warn the Secret Service? Either they were incompetent on a scale that would be genuinely shocking, or Oswald was something other than what the official story says he was. In the months before the assassination, Oswald was doing some unusual things for a supposed lone communist. He got a job at the Texas School Book Depository through a connection to a woman who was friends with a former CIA officer. He went to Mexico City 6 weeks before the assassination, allegedly to try to get a visa to Cuba. While he was there, he visited both the Soviet embassy and the Cuban embassy. And according to the newly declassified documents, he met with a KGB officer named Valery Kostakov, a man the CIA specifically identified as working in the KGB's Department 13. That's the department responsible for assassinations and sabotage. 6 weeks later, Kennedy was dead. And Oswald, the man who told reporters he was just a patsy, never got to explain any of it, because Jack Ruby made sure of that. Before we get to Ruby, let's talk about something else Oswald did that doesn't get nearly enough attention. In April of 1963, 7 months before the assassination, Oswald allegedly attempted to assassinate a retired Army general named Edwin Walker. Walker was a far-right political figure who had resigned from the military under controversy. He was giving speeches that Oswald apparently found offensive. So Oswald, according to the official story, went to Walker's house one night with his rifle and took a shot at him through the window. He missed. Walker reported the shooting to police. No suspect was identified at the time. After the assassination, Oswald's wife, Marina, told investigators that Oswald had shown her a photograph of Walker's house that he'd taken while planning the attack. Now, here's what that tells us. If Oswald attempted to kill Edwin Walker in April 1963, then Oswald was capable of planning and attempting political violence. That's the Warren Commission's argument. Oswald tried to kill Walker. Therefore, it's entirely believable that he killed Kennedy too. Except, Walker survived because Oswald was a bad shot. But the Warren Commission says Oswald made 3 shots in 8.6 seconds from a manual bolt-action rifle, hitting a moving target twice from a 6th-floor window, and it was the work of an expert marksman. Was it the work of the same man who couldn't hit a stationary target through a window from close range 7 months earlier? Now let's talk about the magic bullet. Because if there's one piece of this entire case that has fueled 60 years of doubt, it's this. The official story says 3 shots were fired from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. 3 shots. 8.6 seconds. 1 gunman. 1 rifle. The first shot missed entirely. The second shot, this is the one they call CE-399, entered Kennedy's back, exited through his throat, then continued and hit Governor Connally, breaking a rib, shattering his wrist, and ending up lodged in his thigh. 1 bullet. 2 men. 7 wounds. And when they found that bullet on a stretcher at Parkland Hospital, it was nearly pristine. Nearly pristine. After allegedly passing through 2 human beings and creating 7 separate wounds. Critics called it the magic bullet. And honestly, the name fits. Because here's what that bullet would have had to do, according to the Warren Commission. It entered Kennedy's back at a downward angle, because Oswald was firing from above. Then somehow, changed direction and exited Kennedy's throat at an upward angle. Then changed direction again to hit Connally, then made a series of turns through Connally's body and ended up in his thigh, and came out looking like you could put it back in the box. Here's the thing about that. A former forensic pathologist named Cyril Wecht, one of the most respected figures in American forensic pathology, testified before Congress that the single bullet theory was scientifically impossible. His argument was simple. If Oswald was firing downward from the 6th floor, the bullet would have been moving downward through Kennedy's body. So how did it exit through his throat going upward? If the bullet entered Kennedy's back traveling downward, it should have exited through his chest, not his throat. The geometry doesn't work. That's not a YouTube comment. That's a forensic pathologist who testified before the United States Congress. And then there's the stretcher. In 2023, a former Secret Service agent named Paul Landis, 88 years old, a man who was walking just behind Kennedy's limousine when the shots were fired, came forward with something new. He said he personally picked up a bullet from Kennedy's seat in the limousine. He placed it on the stretcher, and he believes that bullet rolled off Kennedy's stretcher onto Connolly's stretcher when the two men were placed side by side at the hospital, which would mean the magic bullet that supposedly passed through two men and created 7 wounds never left Kennedy's body in transit at all. And the chain of custody for the most important piece of evidence in the most important murder in American history was compromised from the very beginning. Now, the Warren Commission didn't know that. Paul Landis never came forward until 60 years later. But here's what that means for the official story. If CE-399 didn't travel the path the Commission described, if it simply fell from Kennedy's body onto a stretcher, then the single bullet theory doesn't just have problems, it falls apart entirely. And if the single bullet theory falls apart, then Oswald couldn't have done it alone, because you'd need at least 2 shooters to account for all the wounds. And the Warren Commission said there was only one. And here's one more thing about that bullet that I need you to think about. CE-399 was found on a stretcher at Parkland Memorial Hospital, not in either man's body. In the chaos of treating 2 gunshot victims, in a hospital that had not yet realized the president was about to die, nobody secured the crime scene. Nobody documented the chain of custody. Nobody can say with certainty whose stretcher that bullet came from, or how it got there. The most important bullet in American history, and nobody knows exactly where it came from. Here's where it really gets interesting, and I want you to put yourself in Dealey Plaza for a moment. It's a sunny Friday afternoon. The President of the United States is coming down your street. People are cheering, kids are waving flags. And then, in the space of about 6 seconds, everything changes. If you were standing there that day, if you heard those shots, where did they come from? That's not a rhetorical question, because the witnesses who were there, the real people who were actually standing in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, had very different answers. And a lot of them said the shots came from in front. The Grassy Knoll is a raised area to the right and in front of where Kennedy's limousine was when the fatal shot hit. Not behind the car, not from the book depository, in front. Now the Warren Commission dismissed those witnesses. They said 3 shots, all from the depository, all from behind. Done. But in 1979, 15 years after the Warren Report, Congress launched its own investigation. The House Select Committee on Assassinations spent 2 years reviewing the evidence, and here's what they concluded. Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy. Probably. Assassinated as a result of a conspiracy. It's not a YouTube comment section. That's the United States Congress. The committee based part of its conclusion on an acoustic analysis of a Dallas police radio recording from the day of the shooting. Experts analyzed the tape and identified 4 gunshots, not 3. 4. And the echo pattern of one of those shots indicated it came from the direction of the Grassy Knoll. Now, later analysis disputed that acoustic evidence, and the committee's Grassy Knoll finding remains controversial. But here's what is not controversial. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, a United States congressional investigation, concluded that there was probably a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy, and that conclusion has never been officially reversed. It's just been quietly set aside. Let's talk about some other things the witnesses saw. S.M. Holland was a railroad signal supervisor who was standing on the overpass above Dealey Plaza, with a clear view of the whole scene. He said he heard 4 shots. He saw a puff of smoke rise from behind the wooden fence on the Grassy Knoll. and he said he absolutely believed a shot came from that direction. Holland wasn't alone. Multiple witnesses on the overpass reported the same thing: a puff of smoke, a sound from in front of the motorcade, coming from behind the fence on the Grassy Knoll. Now, firearms experts will tell you that modern rifles don't produce visible puffs of smoke, but some older ammunition, particularly ammunition loaded by hand rather than factory-loaded, can produce smoke. And if someone wanted to stay hidden after firing, the wooden fence on the Grassy Knoll was the perfect place to do it. There was another witness that deserves attention. John Hill, a Dallas schoolteacher, was standing just 5 feet from the limousine when the shots were fired. One of the closest civilian witnesses. She said she heard at least 4 shots, possibly more. And she said she believed shots came from the Knoll area. The Warren Commission didn't include her full testimony in its final report. They used some of what she said, but not the parts about 4 shots and the Knoll. Witnesses who heard 3 shots from behind. In the report, witnesses who heard 4 shots and saw smoke from in front. Not so much. I'm not saying the Warren Commission deliberately buried evidence. I'm just saying the witnesses who contradicted the official story got a lot less attention than the ones who confirmed it. And that matters. John Kennedy made a lot of enemies in his 3 years as president. And not small enemies. Not political rivals. Not business competitors. Dangerous enemies. The kind of enemies that don't send a strongly worded letter. The kind of enemies that have resources, have connections, and have done this kind of thing before. And when you look at the list, when you really look at it, you realize something unsettling. Almost every major power center in American life in 1963 had a reason to want John Kennedy out of the White House. That's not conspiracy thinking. That's just reading the history. Kennedy was fighting his own intelligence agencies, fighting organized crime, fighting the anti-Castro movement, moving toward peace with the Soviet Union, and signaling a possible exit from Vietnam. He was the most powerful man in the world, and he had made enemies in every direction. Let's start with the CIA. Kennedy inherited the Bay of Pigs operation from the Eisenhower administration. A CIA-planned invasion of Cuba using anti-Castro Cuban exiles. The plan was for American air support to provide cover for the invasion. Kennedy pulled the air support. The invasion failed catastrophically. Over 1,000 men were captured. It was one of the most embarrassing foreign policy disasters in American history. And Kennedy, privately, was furious at the CIA for getting him into it. He reportedly said he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. That's not a man who was on good terms with his own intelligence agency. Then there's the mob. Attorney General Robert Kennedy, JFK's brother, was waging an unprecedented war against organized crime. The mob had helped get JFK elected in some key states. They'd expected, let's say, a certain degree of gratitude. Instead, they got the most aggressive federal prosecution of organized crime in American history. Certain mob bosses were not happy about that. Sam Giancana, Carlos Marcello, Santos Traficante, 3 of the most powerful mob figures in the country, all of whom had reason to want Kennedy gone, and all of whom were investigated by the House Select Committee as potential conspiracy participants. And then there's Cuba. Anti-Castro Cuban exiles had been trained, funded, and armed by the CIA for the Bay of Pigs. When Kennedy pulled the air support, when the invasion collapsed, those men blamed Kennedy personally. Some of them blamed him for the deaths of their friends. And then there's the military-industrial complex. Kennedy was a wartime president who was increasingly skeptical of war. After the Cuban Missile Crisis, he began secret back-channel negotiations with Khrushchev. He signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. He had started talking about withdrawing American advisors from Vietnam. There were powerful people in Washington who did not want that to happen. And then there's the Soviet angle. Oswald met with a KGB assassination specialist 6 weeks before the shooting. The Soviet Union and the United States had just come through the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest the world had ever come to nuclear war. Was Oswald a Soviet asset? Was he set up by the Soviets? Was he acting independently? We don't know. And here's the most uncomfortable possibility of all. What if it wasn't one of these groups? What if it was more than one? What if the same man who met with a KGB assassination specialist was also connected to anti-Castro Cuban exiles who were furious at Kennedy? And what if someone inside the American government knew it was coming, knew about Oswald, knew about the plan, and decided to let it happen? That's not a comfortable thought, but it's a thought that an awful lot of people, including members of the United States Congress, have had. And nobody has been able to prove it's wrong. Let's talk about Jack Ruby, because Jack Ruby is one of the strangest pieces of this entire story, and he doesn't get nearly enough attention. Think about what Jack Ruby did. He shot a man in custody, in a police station, surrounded by officers, on live national television. And then he claimed he did it for Jackie Kennedy. Does that make sense to you? A nightclub owner with mob connections, a man who walked in and out of police headquarters like he owned the place, commits the most public murder in American history to spare a widow from coming back to Dallas. That's the official explanation. And the Warren Commission somehow accepted it. Here's what the commission didn't spend enough time on. Ruby didn't just happen to be in that parking garage. He went there, deliberately, at a specific time. He knew when the transfer was happening, and he got there early enough to be in position. Jack Ruby was a Dallas nightclub owner with known connections to organized crime. On November 24, 1963, 2 days after Kennedy was shot, Oswald was being transferred from the Dallas City Jail to the county jail. It should have been a routine transfer, heavy security, dozens of police officers, a parking garage, and somehow, in the middle of all of that, Jack Ruby walked right up to Oswald and shot him dead. Live on national television. Millions of Americans were watching their TV sets that Sunday morning, and they watched the only man who could answer the most important question in American history die on the floor of a Dallas parking garage. Now think about that. Ruby had no official reason to be in that parking garage. He claimed he did it because he was overcome with grief for Jackie Kennedy and didn't want her to have to come back to Dallas for a trial. That was his explanation. Here's what we know about Ruby that makes that explanation very hard to believe. Ruby had connections to the Dallas Police Department. He was known to walk in and out of police headquarters freely, which is why nobody stopped him that Sunday morning. He had connections to the mob, specifically to Carlos Marcello, the New Orleans mob boss who had publicly said he wanted Robert Kennedy destroyed. He had connections to Cuba, specifically to people who'd been involved in running guns to anti-Castro fighters. Jack Ruby knew everybody, and Jack Ruby knew exactly what he was doing. He was convicted of Oswald's murder. The conviction was overturned on appeal, and in January of 1967, while awaiting a new trial, Jack Ruby died of cancer, aged 55. Before he died, Ruby gave an interview in which he said, and I want you to listen to this carefully, the world will never know the true facts of what occurred. My motive, in other words. He said, I am used as a scapegoat. And then he said something that has haunted investigators for 60 years. Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts. Jack Ruby, the man who silenced the only witness to the assassination. The man with mob connections and police connections and Cuba connections, died, saying the world would never know the true facts. And then there's one more thing about Ruby that the official story doesn't spend enough time on. When Ruby was in jail after shooting Oswald, he repeatedly asked to be taken to Washington, D.C. to testify before the Warren Commission. He said he had things to tell them that he couldn't say in Dallas, things he was afraid to say while he was still in Texas. He specifically said, "I would like to see Mr. Chief Justice Warren." Warren visited him in jail, tense, and Ruby told him, in that jail cell in Dallas, "Gentlemen, my life is in danger here. If you request that I go to Washington, I will tell you more things than you could dream about." Warren didn't take him to Washington. Ruby never got to say what he wanted to say, and the things he could have dreamed about, whatever they were, died with him. Here's where we are, and I want to be honest with you about something before I give you the summary. I am not telling you that I know who killed JFK. Nobody does. Not with certainty. Not with proof. But here's what I am telling you. The official story, the Warren Commission story, the lone gunman, 3 shots, case closed story, does not hold up. It doesn't hold up against the forensic evidence. It doesn't hold up against the witness testimony. It doesn't hold up against the congressional findings of 1979. And it doesn't hold up against 77,000 pages of CIA documents that somebody decided needed to stay classified for 60 years. You don't classify evidence about a lone gunman for 60 years. You classify evidence that points somewhere you don't want people to look. And that somewhere, whatever it is, has been protected by every administration from Lyndon Johnson to Joe Biden. Think about that lineage. Democrats and Republicans alike, conservatives and liberals, men who disagreed about everything else, agreed that the American people shouldn't see everything there is to see about the day their president was shot in Dallas. Why? That's the question. That's always been the question. And in 60 years, not one person with direct knowledge of the full truth has ever come forward. Not one. Either because they can't, or because they're afraid, or because they're gone. The Warren Commission says one man, acting alone, fired 3 shots in 8.6 seconds and killed the President of the United States. But the magic bullet defies the laws of physics, according to multiple forensic experts, and its chain of custody was compromised from the moment it left Dealey Plaza. The CIA was watching Oswald for 4 years, including his meeting with a KGB assassination specialist, and told nobody. The United States Congress concluded in 1979 that Kennedy was probably killed as part of a conspiracy, and that finding has never been officially reversed. The man who silenced Oswald died in jail, saying the world would never know the true facts. The 2025 document releases gave us more details, more CIA surveillance records, more confirmation that Oswald's movements were known at the highest levels, but they didn't give us the answer. And 60 years later, we still don't have it. What I want to know is this: if Oswald really did act alone, if the Warren Commission really did get it right, why did it take 77,000 classified pages to tell us that? What was so important that it had to stay secret for 60 years? Here's what I keep coming back to. Kennedy was killed in 1963. We are now in 2025. That's 62 years. Every major figure connected to this case is dead. Oswald, Ruby, John Connor, Marcello. Every CIA director from that era. Every Secret Service agent who was in that limousine. They're all gone. The witnesses are mostly gone. The documents are still being released. And the truth, whatever the full truth is, gets further away every single year. And yet people keep looking. Researchers, journalists, filmmakers, former government officials who spend their retirements going through declassified files. Because the question matters, not just as a historical mystery, not just as a true crime case, but because the answer, whatever it is, tells us something fundamental about how power works in the United States of America, and about who, at the end of the day, is really in charge. If you think you know, drop it in the comments. And if this case got under your skin, if this is the kind of story you need to go deeper on, hit subscribe to Dark Vault Production. But before you go, here's the question that has kept investigators up at night for 60 years. If the CIA knew that Oswald met with a KGB assassination specialist 6 weeks before Dallas and said nothing, what does that silence tell you? Because silence isn't neutral. Silence is a choice. Tell me what you think that choice means in the comments below, because I think you already know the answer.